at the sink now where we're going to install the diverter to your tap. First, let's examine the contents of the diverter bag. First, and most importantly, you have the diverter. It's got a lever that you'll use to access the water to the machine. Next, you've got 3 different size adapters in case your diverter doesn't screw right onto the end of your tap. 2 spare O-rings, 2 small squeeze clamps that we'll use to put over the ends of the hoses, and finally 2 drywall anchors in case you want to mount your ionizer on the wall. So we'll begin by removing the aerator from the end of your tap, and generally you can do this with your fingers, but if you find that it's too tight, you can loosen it with a pair of pliers or vice grips. Then we'll see if the diverter attaches to the threads at the end of the tap, and in this case you can see that it doesn't. So we'll try the different adapters until we find the one that actually fits. And then we'll screw that in, being careful not to over tighten it. Finger tight is usually good enough. And then we'll attach the adapter, the diverter, to the adapter. Again, tightening it firmly but not over tight. If you find that the adapters provided in the kit don't attach to your faucet, and that you have a specialized faucet, you can go to any good hardware store or plumbing supply store and find the proper adapter. If you find that your diverter leaks when you turn the water on to the machine, you can use white Teflon plumber's tape. 2 or 3 wraps around the male threads usually will cure any of the leaks. Now that we have the diverter attached to your tap, we'll install the hoses to your ionizer. We'll start by removing the 2 lengths of hoses out of the bag and the small inline pre-filter. We'll begin by cutting a 4 to 5 inch length of the white hose with a good sharp utility or kitchen knife. The cleaner you make your cut, the less likely you'll have a leak. Next, we'll take the inline pre-filter, and you'll notice there's a black arrow, and this arrow will point in the direction of the water flow and always point towards your ionizer. So we'll take our 4-inch section of white hose that we just cut, and we'll just firmly insert it into the pre-filter with the arrow pointing towards the hose. Next, we'll insert the free end of the hose into the tap water inlet port on the bottom of your ionizer. And again, we just simply do that by firmly pushing in and then giving it a little tug to make sure that it's firmly seated. Next, we'll install the gray acid water outlet hose into the acid water outlet port, and we'll start by taking the small black cap off of the acid water outlet port. A good tip is to soak your gray hose, the end of it, into a cup of warm water for about 20 to 30 seconds, and that'll make installing it over that acid outlet port much easier. In the diverter bag, there were 2 little squeeze clamps. You want to take one of the squeeze clamps after your hose has been soaked and insert it over the end of the gray hose. And the gray hose goes over the acid water outlet port. And that needs to be pushed all the way to the end so that it's firmly seated. And then you simply position the little squeeze clamp, and you may need to use a pair of pliers or vice grips. Position that squeeze clamp right over the outlet port, just like that. Now that you have the hoses installed to the ionizer, the next thing you'll want to consider is the location of your ionizer. Find a spot near the sink that's convenient yet out of the way. Once you locate that spot, the gray hose lays loosely into the sink and you can trim that to the proper length. The remaining white hose gets installed after we estimate the appropriate length to the diverter and trim the hose appropriately. Once again, you'll want to use a nice sharp utility or kitchen knife and make the cut as clean as possible. Once you've cut your hose, one end of it simply installs into the pre-filter by pushing firmly and then giving it a good tug to make sure it's seated properly. The opposite end gets installed to the diverter. The first thing we'll do is remove the small compression nut on the back side of the diverter opposite your lever and install the compression nut over the end of the white hose. The white hose then is pushed onto the diverter, make sure it's on there good and firm, and the compression nut is screwed back into the diverter, again making sure that it's firm but not too tight. And finally, you can position the hose so that it's out of the way. Now that we have all the hoses attached and connected, the last thing we'll do in installing your ionizer is to plug it in and power it up. You'll notice the cord is a 3-prong grounded plug, and ideally you'll want to plug it directly into a 3-prong outlet, and that would be, in an ideal sense, a GFI outlet like you see here. You simply plug it in, and at the back of the ionizer, turn the on-off power switch to the on position. Your ionizer will chime, the lights will light up on the LCD screen momentarily and go out after about 2 seconds. An important note is you'll always want to leave the on-off switch in the on position. Your ionizer will go to sleep between uses and then wake itself up electrically when it senses water flowing into it. If you're away on an extended vacation, you may want to unplug or turn off your ionizer.